the opportunity to be here today. I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So I'll recognize myself for the first question. And I think this really is the question. Senator Cardin's bill is probably in exactly the same bill that I would put in if it happened in the state of West Virginia. And same in Nebraska. The cost share issue, I think, is where we have a question. So I think that we just need to get the answers here. So I'm going to start with you, Administrator Batt. As I mentioned in my opening statement, there's a significant backlog of emergency relief that are waiting on federal funding. And the chairman mentioned the one most recent that we all recall is certainly what happened in Maui with the fire. Many of these projects will have a 10 or 20% cost share that will be provided by a state DOT. So I think Congress needs to have a basis for determining when to waive the statutory cost share for ER projects so that there is an equitable response to natural disasters and other emergencies. The Secretary just said other disasters have had this waived, but we know the key is not every disaster has had this waived. So what factors do you think Congress should consider when reducing the required cost share for an ER project?
Thank you, Ranking Member Capito, for that question. I think it is a fair question to ask, and I think that when you look at some of the examples, both that Senator Cardin has mentioned or that we've used in the past, I think it is scope and scale of a disaster that would, as Secretary Wiedefeld just mentioned, overwhelm state and local agencies' ability to respond. So in Delaware, when we had our bridge disaster, when I served as secretary, it was in the tens of millions of dollars, and it was something that financially we were grateful for the Federal Highway Administration, but it was not a debilitating impact to our state economy had we had to have come up with $10 or $20 million. But in the case of a $1.7 billion bridge replacement with corresponding loss of toll funding that has impacts on their transportation program, I think that's where you get into a scope and scale sense of where the federal government may need to come in, because the 10 or 20% cost share becomes a quite sizable number at that point.
Okay, so scope and scale. All right, so then I want to go to you, Secretary Wiedefeld, and thank you for the phone call that we had. I appreciate that early on, and just amazed at the efforts that you all have done in Maryland, along, I know, with a lot of help. So congratulations on that, and I know there's a big way to go. You mentioned possible cost of the bridge would be $1.7 billion. So if you take out insurance and any other kind of legal cost, we don't really know what it would be. But let's just say, what was the insurance? It was 400?
350.
350. Let's just say you match that with insurance. That'd be good, wouldn't it? So get it down to $1 billion, which is still quite heavy. And then a cost share for Maryland could be possibly $100 million. The bridge, and I mentioned this in my statement because I want to understand, and you explained this to me on the phone call that we had previously, and Ben and I have talked about this as well. The $56 million that you collect on that bridge is used for the maintenance and upkeep of all of the projects in the state, correct? The tunnels and that bridge. And so it's not exclusively dedicated to that bridge, correct?
Correct. Is for the Transportation Authority, which runs all of our toll facilities only, not the general highway system.
Okay. So if you took say a 30-year payback plan to the federal government for the 10%, you would be taking probably a 10% off of that toll revenue that the state of Maryland could use if the cost share that exists now could use to pay back the American taxpayer the cost of the rebuild of the bridge, right?
You could,
if that
sure, if that was
if that was the direction that we decided to go. So the other question I have is, if you have a new bridge, which you will have, hopefully sooner than some of the projections, but I realize it's a major undertaking. If you have a new bridge, is it safe to assume that a new bridge demand on the toll revenues would be less for maintenance and upkeep?
Not necessarily. I mean, the operations is also a big part of the cost, just the ongoing operations, meaning policing and things of that sort, cleaning, keeping things,
So there's a
clear and safe.
standard cost.
Yeah.
I mean, my assumption
Whether it's
is
new or
that a
old, you're
60-year-old bridge is going to cost more than a brand-new one,
yeah, for ongoing maintenance.
For ongoing maintenance.
For future maintenance, yes.
which is what the dedication of the tolls is for as well. So is it unreasonable to assume that, and I know we're making assumptions that the bridge that, I think it was in Minnesota, got the 100% cost share when it collapsed. It was not a toll bridge. You're going to put the tolls back on when this is completed. You've pretty much stated that. I think the state of Maryland is going to do that, which I would do that too if I was the state of Maryland, so I'm not being critical of that. Why is it wrong to assume, if you're the American taxpayer, that since you have a dedicated source of revenue there, that over time, you would not be asked to pay the 10% cost share that Maryland would have to bear?
Just, I
So
think
make
there's
the argument there.
Sure. No, I think there's some other factors here. One is we are losing revenue now, right? And we'll
Right.
continue to lose that revenue through the next 4.5 years, is what we're projecting right now. So we're losing those dollars now. The other part of that is, in effect, we are costing businesses and people every day by the delay of this bridge being built, by any delay, potential delay of this bridge being built. So all those are added costs that, in effect, we're trying to cover now so that we can get this bridge done as quickly as we can.
So are you telling me that the state of Maryland now, I know I'm over my time, but I think this is really the crux of the, I don't even want to say it's a disagreement so much, but is to try to figure out how the best way to do this, is that the cost that the state of Maryland is bearing now should also play into what Maryland should bear in terms of the rebuild of the bridge?
No, I guess what I'm saying is that the insurance comes to $350 million.
Right.
So that's supporting it. There is a burden.
That will go back to the emergency.
Sure, but getting back
Right.
to the larger issue of the scale of this project and the impacts of it, there's this other impact that we are going through now with the loss of revenues for the toll authority for the next several years.
Okay. And I would just say that we have the rollout of all of the projects that have, where there's been a waiver granted of the 10% or 20% cost share. So I think this would probably be useful to submit to the committee for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Capito, and I think your questions are extremely important, so thank you for the manner